So what is up, guys? Soon the Savage back, and I'm here with NFL Steve Young predictions. That is NFL Week 8 predictions, and since it is Halloween, well, when I upload this, it's going to be the 29th, so Halloween's going to be 2 days away. But anyways, I'm all dressed up. I am Drew Brees, of course, the GOAT. Got the hat, the eye black, the jersey, and even the shoulder pads. But these are just like my hockey shoulder pads. Anyways, we are here with Week 8 predictions. You know, last week was one of my better weeks. I think I went 11 for 15, so that's pretty good. Wait, no, it was, I think I was 10 for 14, so that's still pretty good. But anyways, it's a brand new week. Got a whole lot of predictions to get to, so without further ado, let's get this video started. Alright, so you're starting off with our Thursday Night Football matchup between the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. Atlanta, straight up, you blew it last week. You know, you were down by 2. You were down 14-16. And of course, you had first and goal, but you told Todd Gurley just run the ball and just like don't score. He scored, and then the Lions drove down the field to win. Anyways, Matt Ryan, he did himself a good job. 338 yards, a touchdown, and no picks. Todd Gurley, outside of his mistake, he was all right with 63 yards and 2 touchdowns. On terms of receiving, Julio Jones was still the number 1 target with 97 receiving yards, followed by Calvin Ridley with 69 and a touchdown, followed by Hayden Hurst with 68. And that was pretty much it. You know, your defense did a decent job with the Lions for most of the game, but then on the final drive, you just let them run all over you. And then the Panthers, you know, I talked about you in my Saints recap, but you know what? Like I said, you guys have a lot of potential. Teddy Bridgewater against the Saints was pretty good, had 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. But in terms of rushing, you guys were just nothing. Mike Davis only had 12 rushing yards. Bridgewater almost had more. He only had 10 yards, though. Then you followed up with your top receiver, DJ Moore, 93 yards and 2 touchdowns, followed by Robbie Anderson with 78 yards, Curtis Samuel with 48. And, you know, your defense, you know, fell apart to both the rush and the passing game of the Saints, so it wasn't that good. Like, the only good play that you had was the Brian Burns strip sack. And, yeah, that was pretty much it. Anyways, the Carolina Panthers are favored by 2.5 to win this one, and I'm going to believe in them because, you know, the Falcons suck. So I'm going to say Panthers win and cover this one. And now you have our very first 1 o'clock match between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. Starting out with the Steelers, you're 6-0, even though last game wasn't exactly your best. I mean, sure, you had an amazing start, but just a sloppy finish. Anyway, starting out with Ben Roethlisberger, he threw for 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 3 picks. Now, yeah, I would work on the picks if I'm Roethlisberger. In terms of rushing, James Conner was your leader with 82 yards. But in terms of receiving, your leader was Juju Smith-Schuster with 85 receiving yards, followed by Deontay Johnson with 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think Deontay Johnson got injured, so that's not good. And Eric Ebron had 50 yards, and that was pretty much it. You know, your defense in the first half was amazing. The second half, the wheels started to fall off, which was an issue. But eventually, you stopped the Titans, so good job. And then on to the Baltimore Ravens. You were on your bye, so you're 5-1. When you went up against the Eagles, once again, great start, but a terrible finish. Lamar Jackson had 186 passing yards, a touchdown, and no picks. His passing game has been terrible this year, but he had a good rushing game in Week 6, as he had 108 rushing yards and a touchdown. In terms of receiving, the leader was Hollywood Brown with 57 yards, followed by Nick Boyle with 33, Willie Snead with 32, Duvernay with 31, and that was pretty much it. I know, like I said, your defense did a good job with the Eagles at first. Well, at least in the first half. The second half was terrible, especially the fourth quarter. But, you know, you stopped them on the 2-point conversion that they needed to send the game to overtime, so good job on that. Anyways, the Ravens are favored by 3 to win this game. But you know what? I'm going to say that the Steelers pull off the victory. I think right now, Steelers may be the best team in the NFL. So the Steelers win this game. And now you have our very next match between the Indianapolis Colts and the Detroit Lions. Starting out with the Colts, you know, you were on your bye last week, but when you beat the Bengals, it was interesting. You know, had a terrible start, but you made an amazing comeback. Phillip Rivers did better, as he had 371 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. The pick, of course, he's been throwing turnovers, so yeah. It's not that good. In terms of rushing, you didn't really do much. You know, Jonathan Taylor, he had 60 yards, but you only ran the ball 15 times. Like, you need to develop more of a ground game. I think that's what's going to take you over the top. Your lead receiver was Malik Jackson with 108 yards, followed by Trey Burton with 58 yards. Jonathan Taylor, he had 55 receiving yards, followed by Zach Pascal and Jack Doyle, as they both had a touchdown. Your defense had a little bit of trouble with the Bengals at first, but of course you eventually shut them down at the end, so good job on you. And then the Lions, you were lucky to come out with a victory, against Atlanta. You did decently. They almost had you, but of course Todd Gurley made his massive mistake, and you won the game. But good fourth quarter, but a good final drive by Matt Stafford, as he threw for 340 yards, 1 touchdown, and no picks. So he is not the problem in Detroit. It turns out it's still Matt Patricia. So even though the Falcons lost, so did the Lions, because Matt Patricia is still going to be around. In terms of rushing, there was nothing. Adrian Peterson, only 29 yards, followed by DeAndre Swift with only 27 yards and a touchdown. Kenny Golladay led in receiving with 114 yards, followed by Marvin Jones. He hasn't really been much of a target this season, but he followed up with 80 yards, followed by Danny Amendola with 62, TJ Hawkinson with 59 yards, and the game-tying touchdown as Matt Prater kicked the game winner. Your defense was smart enough to let Todd Gurley score, even though he didn't intentionally try to score. But anyways, the Colts are favored by 2.5 to win this one, and I'm going to say that they win and cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup between the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. Starting out with the Vikings, you were on your bye week in Week 7, but in Week 6 against the Falcons, you were absolutely terrible. Lost to them 40-23. Kirk Cousins, maybe he is the problem. He threw for 343 yards. He did throw 3 touchdowns, but he did also throw 3 picks, so that was terrible. Andrew Mattinson, even though he was going to be the main rusher for the team, he did nothing with only 26 yards against that defense in the Falcons. That is pathetic. But in terms of receiving, your leader was Justin Jefferson, so it was good that he fell to you, as he had 166 yards and 2 touchdowns, followed by Smith Jr. with 55 and Adam Thielen with 51 and a touchdown. Your defense fell apart to the Falcons, but you know what? Like I said, the Falcons have a very good offense, when they're under a better head coach, and their interim head coach is better than what Dan Quinn was. And then the Packers, after a tough loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you come out guns a-blazing against the Texans as you won 35-20. Aaron Rodgers threw for 283 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no picks. In terms of rushing, you didn't have Aaron Jones, but Jamal Williams followed in nicely with 77 yards and a touchdown. In terms of receiving, you're happy to have Devontae Adams back, and I'm glad he's back, as he had 196 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And that was pretty much it. That was the only guy Aaron Rodgers threw to the whole game. Your defense did very well in the first half, but really only gave up points in garbage time, so good defensive performance by you guys. Anyways, the Packers are favored by 7 to win this one. I'm going to say, the Vikings suck. Packers are very good. So I'm going to say Packers win and cover the spread. And now you have our very next match between the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. Starting out with the Patriots, wow. That was just an awful game that you guys played against the 49ers. Starting out with Cam Newton, so bad, threw 98 yards and 3 interceptions. I think he was negative in terms of fantasy points. So bad that they benched him for Jarrett Stidham, as he threw for 64 yards and a pick. So, against that banged up 49ers squad, come on. In terms of rushing, Harris was your leader with 58 yards, and in terms of receiving, Myers was your leader with 6 yards, followed by Burkhead with 35, Bird with 16, and that was pretty much it. No one could do anything for the Patriots on offense. On defense, you fell apart to Jeff Wilson Jr. He's let's see, they're running backs there. Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, Jeff Wilson, Jerick McKinnon. You fell apart to their 4th string running back. But you know what? They have, 49ers have, the best running back by committee. It's not even close. And then the Bills, I expected way more out of you against the Jets. Josh Allen threw for 307 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. But he ran for 61 yards, so he was okay. On terms of receiving, your leader was Cole Beasley with 112 yards, followed by Tyler Kroft with 64. Diggs only had 48, so he did take a bit of a step back, but I think he's going to thrive against the Patriots. Moss had 25, and, that was pretty much it. Your defense, shut down the Jets, but it's the Jets. They're terrible, and even though it was Darnold that you shut down, he was just terrible that game. Right now, if these two teams weren't among us, they would be in the sus category. The Bills, even though people are saying they're contenders, they're sus, and Patriots saying that they're contenders, they're extremely sus. But anyways, Bills are favored by 3.5 to win this one, and of course, I'm going to say that they win and cover. And now you have our very next match between the Tennessee Titans and the Cincinnati Bengals. Starting out with the Titans, You did the game against the Steelers, awful start, but a nice and strong finish. Even though you did fall up short, 27-24. Ryan Tannehill definitely took a step back than what he did against the Texans, but going against the Steelers defense, I would expect that. He only threw for 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. Derrick Henry, wasn't as good, but still racked up 75 yards and a touchdown. In terms of receiving, A.J. Brown just completely broke out as he had 153 yards and a touchdown, followed by Corey Davis as he had 35 yards and a touchdown. In terms of defense, you did pick off Big Ben 3 times, but, the first half was just bad. Your defense did tighten up in the second half, but the first half just wasn't that great. And then the Bengals, man, Joe Burrow is the answer, but your defense is not, as you lost 37-34. Burrow threw for 406 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. In terms of rushing, there was no Joe Mixon, but Giovanni Bernard only had 37 yards. Burrow had 34 yards and a touchdown. In terms of receiving, Tyler Boyd was the number 1 guy with 101 yards and a touchdown, followed by A.J. Green. He's starting to come back a little bit, which is good to see for the Bengals, with 82 yards. And then T. Higgins had another really good game with 71 yards and a touchdown, followed by Giovanni Bernard with 59 yards and a touchdown. Like I said, your defense just fell apart to the Browns, but their offense their offense is pretty good, even though they didn't have OBJ. They're still without Nick Chubb, but Kareem Hunt, of course, is a good number 1 back. So currently, the Titans are favored by 5.5 to win this one. I'm going to say they win, but don't cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Cleveland Browns. Starting out with the Raiders, when I heard your whole line was going down against the Bucs D, I knew you guys were screwed, and you were, as you lost 45-20. Derek Carr threw for 284 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick, so not his best performance, and of course, like I said, your line was down, so your rushing game produced about 76 yards through 6 rushers. Josh Jacobs only cracked 17 yards, so that was awful. But in terms of receiving, Nelson Aguilar was the number 1 guy with 107 yards and a touchdown. Man, I guess when he's not in Philly, he's not dropping the ball. Followed by Darren Waller with 50 yards and a touchdown, and Renfro with 42 yards, Henry Ruggs with 35, and that's pretty much it. Your defense fell apart to the Bucs, but they are a team on the rise. Definitely could be a contender. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then the Browns, you're at the part of this. I saw this funny meme. It's like the part of the Baker Mayfield cycle. Like, plays like shit, gets criticized by the media, beats up a really good team, and then the cycle just repeats. But anyways, against the Browns, he went 0 for 5 to start the game, but he finished the game 22 for 23 in passing with 297 yards and 5 touchdowns. So that is amazing to know that he bounced back so well. Kareem Hunt ran for 76 yards. In terms of receiving, Rashard Higgins was the number 1 guy with 110 yards, followed by Harrison Bryant with 56 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that was pretty much it. Jarvis Landry had 48. But yeah, anyways, the biggest loss for you guys is Odell Beckham Jr. as he tore his ACL and is out for the season. So that is just awful. Your defense, you fell apart to the Bengals, but you know what? Like I said, Joe Burrow as their quarterback, they have a whole lot of potential. They're a great offense under Burrow. The Browns are favored by 2.5 to win this one, but you know what? I'm going to say Baker Mayfield takes a step back as the Raiders pull off the W. And now you have our very next matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Jets. Starting out with the Chiefs, you went into Denver and you just completely silenced them. Patrick Mahomes, barely had to lift a finger as he threw for 200 yards and a touchdown. In terms of rushing, your leader was Clyde Edwards-Helaire with 46 yards and a touchdown. Le'Veon Bell in his first game did okay with only 39 yards on 6 carries, so not bad. Not bad. In terms of receiving, your leader was McCole Hardman with 57 yards, followed by Tyreek Hill with 55 yards and a touchdown. But the big man of the game was Byron Pringle with 102 yards on a kick return and a touchdown. On your defense, you picked off Drew Lock twice as you completely silenced Denver in a nice snowy game. And then the Jets, going up against the Bills, I expected you to get smoked, but you only lost by 8. So your defense did a lot better, so that's pretty good. But anyway, Sam Darnold threw for 120 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 picks. So against Buffalo's D, even though it's been struggling, Buffalo finally got to step up. In terms of rushing, Frank Gore ran for 60 yards, and Perrine ran for 40 yards. In terms of receiving, Mims led with 42, followed by Berrios with 35. And yeah, that was pretty much it. Your defense did a good job with Buffalo for the most part. But eventually, Buffalo pulled out the victory as their kicker just completely silenced you. Currently the Chiefs are favored by 19.5 to win. This is like 2007 Michigan versus Appalachian State. Even though like Michigan was favored by 33, Appalachian State pulled out the victory. So I'm going to say the Chiefs win and cover the spread. And now you have our final 1 o'clock matchup between the LA Rams and the Miami Dolphins. Starting out with the Rams, well, Jared Goff did a good job against the Bears, threw for 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. You guys just kind of silenced the Bears. Even though they were 5-1, they were a very sus contender. In terms of rushing, Darrell Henderson ran with 63 yards, followed by Mark Brown with 57 yards and a touchdown. In terms of receiving, Josh Reynolds led with 52 yards and a touchdown, followed by Cooper Kupp with 43. And that was pretty much it. You silenced the Bears, but their like I said, they were kind of sus. And you did pick off Nick Foles twice, which is pretty good. And then the Dolphins, here comes Tua Tagovailoa, the number 5 pick. Most likely was going to be the number 1 pick last year if he didn't get injured, so he's getting the start. As last game, Ryan Fitzpatrick threw for 191 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks, followed by Myles Gaskin as he had 91 rushing yards. In terms of receiving, Shaheen led with 51 yards and a touchdown, followed by Jakeem Grant with 48 yards. In terms of defense, you stopped a Joe Flacco-led Jets. You're not getting that far. But Tua Tagovailoa, in his debut, he threw for 2 passes and 2 completions for 9 yards. So, good start for Tua. The Rams are favored by 3.5 to win this one, but you know what? It's Tua time, and Tua Tagovailoa is going to take the Dolphins to a victory. So, Dolphins, they win this game. And now you have our very first 4 o'clock matchup between the Denver Broncos and the LA Chargers. Starting out with the Chargers, Justin Herbert is the real deal for you guys, as he threw for 347 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks, and he also led you guys in rushing with 66 yards and a touchdown, so that's just amazing. In terms of receiving, your leader was Keenan Allen with 125 yards, followed by Guyton with 84 yards and a touchdown, and then Justin Jackson with 43 yards and a touchdown. And no, actually, he didn't have a touchdown. And that was pretty much it. Your defense fell apart to, James Robinson, but he's pretty good running back, but of course running backs are replaceable. You did well against the passing game, so yeah. Good game overall for you guys, even though your defense was a little bit shaky. And then the Broncos, man, getting Drew Lock back, maybe he isn't the real deal. Maybe he needs to prove himself this game. Anyways, he threw for 254 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 picks. In terms of rushing, Phillip Lindsay had 79 yards, even though he wasn't the main carrier, as that was Melvin Gordon, who had 68 yards and a touchdown. In terms of receiving, your leader was I'm not even going to say it, but Okunwabi, something like that. Anyways, he led with 60 yards, followed by Tim Patrick, as he had 60 yards also. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Your defense didn't really do that bad. Even though Mahomes only threw for 200 yards, he barely had to lift a finger. So yeah, not much you can do there. The Chargers are favored by 3 to win this game, and I'm going to say that they win and cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup between my boys in the New Orleans Saints and the Chicago Bears. Starting out with the Saints, against the Panthers, we played a great game. The offense was on par. The defense was getting better, so a lot to look forward to in this week. Anyways, Drew Brees threw for 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks, so he, of course, was right on point. Alvin Kamara had 14 carries for 83 yards and no touchdowns. Drew Brees had the only rushing touchdown, as, of course, he does his classic fleur de leap. In terms of receiving, we were without Emmanuel Sanders or Michael Thomas. Hopefully we get them back this week against the Bears. But, Marquez Callaway led the way with 75 yards, followed by Alvin Kamara with 65. Drake Smith had 54. Deontay Harris with 46, and Jared Cook with 32. The defense, like I said, did well against the rush, not too well against the pass. But, of course, we ended up pulling out the victory anyways. So good job, guys. And then the Chicago Bears, well, I thought you could beat the Rams, but turns out you guys suck. Nick Foles was just not on par, as he had 261 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 picks. In terms of rushing, David Montgomery just can't get anything going. You need to improve that O-line just so David Montgomery can flourish. In terms of receiving, your leader was Allen Robinson with 70 yards, followed by Kmet with 45, Darrell Mooney with 40, Graham had 31, and that was pretty much it. Your defense had trouble against the Rams, but they're a pretty decent offense, so Not much I can blame you for there. Anyways, the Saints, we are favored by 4 to win this game. And of course I'm going to say that we win and cover the spread. Because we going to pull out that victory. Who Dat Nation going to get that W. And now you have our final 4 o'clock matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. Starting out with the 49ers, well, I was shocked by you last week. Going up against the Patriots, you pulled out the victory, and it wasn't just with amazing offense. It was the defense that really stood up, so good on you guys. Anyways, Jimmy Garoppolo threw for 277 yards, no touchdowns, but 2 picks, so that's not too good. But in terms of rushing, you didn't even need Raheem Mostert to be your number 1 back, as Jeff Wilson Jr. had 112 yards and 3 touchdowns. In terms of receiving, your leader was Brandon Ayuk with 115 yards, so honestly, a good late wide receiver steal, in my opinion. Followed by Deebo Samuel with 65 yards and George Kittle with 55. Your defense, you got 4 picks. And even though it's super banged up, you did well. Kyle Shanahan is amazing with that defense. And then the Seattle Seahawks fell up short to the Cardinals in overtime, 37-34. Russell Wilson threw for 388 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he did throw 3 costly picks. And that was ultimately the difference maker. He was also your lead rusher with 84 yards, followed by Carlos Hyde with 68 yards and a touchdown. The issue is, of course, Chris Carson is injured and is probably going to miss next game. But in terms of receiving, your leader was Tyler Lockett with 200 receiving yards on 15 receptions and 3 touchdowns. David Moore followed with 54 yards, Will Dissly at 38. DK Metcalf was definitely a lot more silent with 23 yards, but he did have a pick 6 saving tackle on Budda Baker as he just chased him all the way down from the goal line to the 10-yard line. And it was a pretty long run. Your defense, was absolutely terrible. There's nothing I can say, even though you did pick off Kyler Murray once, but that was it. You were just terrible on defense. Anyways, the Seahawks are favored by 3 to win this one, but with how San Fran's been playing with their defense lately against some decent competition, I'm going to say that the San Francisco 49ers win and pull off the upset of the week. And now you have our Sunday Night Football match between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. Starting out, well, both these teams, what they have in common is they lost to a football team with no name. That's the Washington Football Team. Anyways, but the Cowboys fell apart to them 25-3. Andy Dalton was absolutely terrible. Only had 75 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick, so he was terrible. Ezekiel Elliott could not eat as he only had 45 yards and no touchdowns. Amari Cooper was the only one who could produce on offense with 80 receiving yards. In terms of your defense, you fell apart to Antonio Gibson and Terry McLaurin. Not the worst 2 guys to fall apart to on defense, so yeah, that's it. And then the Eagles, Carson Wentz had absolutely no weapons last game, but he made it work, pulling out a 22-21 victory over the Giants. Threw for 359 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 1 terrible interception. Just made a terrible decision. Boston Scott led in rushing with 46 yards, but he also had 46 receiving yards and the game-winning touchdown. Richard Rodgers was the top receiver with 85 yards and no touchdowns, followed by Travis Fulgham and Hightower. They had 73 and 59. Your defense had some trouble against the Giants in the second half, but, forced 2 fumbles, and of course you forced the game-winning fumble with Danny Dimes, but it's Daniel Jones. He's going to fumble that every time. Currently, there is no favorite to win this one according to the score, but I'm just going to say Philly wins this one. I don't even know if Dalton's coming back. I think it's going to be DiNucci starting, so Eagles win. And now you have our final matchup between the New York Giants and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Starting out with the Giants, you lost 22-21 to the Eagles. Daniel Jones threw for 187 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Had 92 rushing yards, could have had over 100, could have had a 90-yard rushing touchdown if he didn't trip over his own feet. So, of course, that's embarrassing. On terms of receiving, your leaders were Sterling Shepard with 59 yards and a touchdown, Evan Ingram with 46 yards, and Golden Tate with 39 yards and a touchdown. But, of course, Daniel Jones fumbled right at the end of the game. Eagles recovered. They won the game. Your defense fell apart to the backups of Philly, so not very good. And then the Bucs, going up against Oakland, I was expecting a big victory, and you pulled that off. Brady threw for 369 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no picks. In terms of rushing, it was kind of split between Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. Fournette had 50 yards, but Ronald Jones had 34 yards and a touchdown. In terms of receiving, Scotty Miller was your leader with 109 yards, followed by Godwin with 88 and a touchdown, and Gronkowski, who's starting to make a bit of a comeback as he had 62 yards and a touchdown. Your defense, didn't do well against the passing game of the Raiders, even though you had 1 pick. But you did well against the rushing game, but they had absolutely no O-line, so yeah, that's pretty much what I got. Tampa Bay is favored by 10.5 to win this one, and of course they're going to win and cover the spread. And that is going to wrap up my video for today. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you want to see all my other prediction videos and my Saints recaps from this season, links to all that will be in the description below. Make sure, if you liked the video, drop a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Comment down below what match you're looking forward to this week, who's your lock of the week, upset of the week. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Make sure to follow me on Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, @StudentSavage. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day. Who Dat Nation is